Hello everyone, I'm Angeline.
And I'm Seb, and we've got a great episode for you here at English Digest.
That's right. You know what? Earlier today, I was just thinking about how different life was before the internet.
When was that?
Quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
Maybe, would you say 20 years? No, more than 20 years ago.
Not in my lifetime.
Not in your lifetime. Oh, we're in a different generation, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, I was a 90s kid, but by the time my memory was fully there, by the time I can properly remember my life, there was already a little bit of the internet around. We had dial-up with that horrible tone.
Okay, so you guys had dial-up. When you were in elementary school?
Yeah, elementary school.
Okay.
I think by junior high, I didn't have dial-up anymore. We had like bad Wi-Fi. So life before the internet was very different,
It was.
I've heard.
I mean, first of all, we wouldn't be able to do things like shop online. We wouldn't be able to watch videos like YouTube. We wouldn't even be able to look for information. We couldn't just Google where's the closest, dumpling shop nearby.
Right.
So what are the top 3 things you use the internet for?
Oof, what don't I use the internet for? I'm a real millennial. I use it for everything.
Okay.
I do have a top 3, though. Okay. First off, I love watching videos online. I'm a complete YouTube addict. So I watch YouTube in my lunch breaks, on the MRT, even while I'm eating. I'm also a big fan of vlogs as well. So, video blogs and groups like this group of people, 解决你的英文 who are very popular on YouTube. I don't know if you watch 解决你的英文.
Yeah, I did watch a few of their episodes. Some of them are pretty funny. Some of them, you kind of need to understand the Taiwanese culture.
Right,
in order to get this humor.
I find 50% of them hilarious.
Yeah,
the other 50, I'm like,
that's about the same for me.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it is something that goes with culture in order for it to be funny.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, when I'm not watching videos, I'm using the internet to shop for clothes, which is another bad habit of mine.
You're a shopping addict too?
Yes. And I have a really bad habit of late at night when I'm sleepy, or maybe when I'm coming back from a bar and I've had 2 or 3 drinks, I'm like, I'm going to go shopping now.
Not the best time to
It's a bad
shopping.
time. You make bad decisions. So that too. And also making plans with friends, obviously.
Okay.
Like everyone else, I use it to arrange to meet up, plan parties, plan hikes, all of that.
Okay.
But it has changed a lot of other things outside of just fun and recreation, hasn't it? It's changed the way that we study and work as well.
The internet has changed the education system, actually. Today we'll be comparing traditional learning, so learning face-to-face in a physical classroom.
Right.
And distance learning, which basically allows you to study wherever you are.
Right.
Okay?
It's not learning in a classroom that's very, very long.
Yeah, it's not.
Yes.
Instead, you rely on technology to facilitate the student-teacher and student-student communication. Okay, so when I was in school, long time ago when the dinosaurs were around.
Okay, wow.
We did have distance learning, but it was actually done via post, okay?
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. I've not heard of that before. That must have been a lot of reading, then, I'm guessing. I'm guessing they sent you books and assignments and then you posted them back.
Yes. So they'll send it to you or you'll go pick it up at the main office and then you'll have to send your assignments in via post every week or every month, whatever the arrangement is.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So nowadays, things are obviously a little bit different, aren't they? The internet allows distance learning programs to upload video classes and even interactive exercises to a pay-to-view website, which means that students, once they paid the fee, can get a much more immersive learning experience than if they just read a book. So actually one recent startup, one new company, which I don't know if you've seen, if you're watching YouTube a lot, have you heard of Masterclass?
No.
Oh, it's a new distance learning program. We are not being paid to advertise them, by the way, but you guys might have seen it if you watch a lot of YouTube, where famous people basically talk about their field of expertise and you get a kind of distance learning class with them, maybe
that's cool.
on creative writing or filmmaking, architecture. It seems like a good platform. Anyway, so now that we know what distance learning is, it's time to look at our writing prompt.
Okay, so it says, in the past, the only way to get an education was to physically attend class. However, thanks to technology, we're no longer restrained to the confines of a traditional classroom to learn. Our writing prompt asks us to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of traditional learning and distance learning. We also have to explain which form of learning we prefer. Now, the essay should be separated into paragraphs and be at least 120 words. Seb, did you do any distance learning when you were in school?
Not really. I did enroll or sign up for a distance learning program just after I graduated from university. I was thinking of getting a TEFL certificate so I could teach English abroad.
Right.
However, I soon discovered that I'm not that kind of learner. Personally, I prefer traditional style classrooms where students can talk to each other and share ideas. Maybe that makes me a little bit more old-fashioned than I seem. So what about you? Do you go for distance learning or are you more of a traditional learner?
I am like you. I prefer traditional learning in the classroom, okay? Actually, when I was in high school, distance learning wasn't a very popular option since we were pretty much expected to attend classes in person.
Right.
Okay, I mean, what else could a teenager be doing if they aren't going to school? Right? So from what I understand, the students who failed a subject or they had to retake a course, they did this through distance learning. So distance learning wasn't a very good thing. If you were doing distance learning, it wasn't good for your reputation.
So we could say it was looked down upon.
It was, yeah.
When we look down upon something, we think that it's not good, basically. So people are looking at you and thinking, you do distance learning? Ugh,
what did you fail?
What did you fail? Why are you so dumb? But of course, that's not the case now.
It's a lot more convenient, actually, with distance education, I can see. I mean, I think as an adult, distance learning would probably be something that I would prefer to a traditional class
there's
now.
lots of perks and advantages now to distance learning. Anyway, we are going to discuss some of those in our approach, I believe.
Yes, okay. So let's think about how we're going to write this essay. Since we're writing an essay to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of two things, we'll be writing an argumentative essay, okay? So this type of essay requires us to gather evidence, present different points on both sides to consider, and then evaluate all of the points, and then you can state your opinion.
Right. Contrary to its name, argumentative essay, we're not shouting and screaming. We're not being super angry. We're being calm. We're collecting all of our ideas and we're formulating a very persuasive essay.
That's right.
Argumentative essays are not one of the many persuasive tools that you can use to convince the reader of your opinion. So unlike some other formats which focus on presenting only the writer's point of view, an argumentative essay will help demonstrate that you have a full understanding of both sides of the argument. And by addressing other points of view, you can also put together a more convincing argument that lets the reader know that you see things in both ways and you know that your side is right. You've fully considered the argument.
Right.
It is a very powerful tool.
So like any other essay, our composition should have an introduction, body, and a conclusion, okay? A reaction paper generally follows this structure. So in the introduction, you will state the purpose of your essay. It should give readers a clear idea of what your essay will cover, right? You can introduce the topic in several ways. You can give some background information about the topic and discuss why this topic is important. You can also talk about the topic generally, like what most people think about it. Or you can give statistical evidence like 2 out of 3 students prefer distance learning. You will also present your thesis statement in the introduction. Your thesis should be clear and concise.
Right. Think of it this way. For the reader, an introduction without a thesis statement is like walking through a thick fog. You can't see where you're going and you're going to get lost. The thesis statement of the article is the headlamp that shows you where you're going. So you need to keep it straightforward. You need to let someone know in 1 or 2 sentences, 1 sentence in this case, because this is a short essay, what this essay is going to be about, what the problem is that you're tackling. Yes, and give them some direction. Otherwise, they're not going to know what's happening. So what should readers be aware of with the body of their essays, Angeline?
So the body of your essay should be clear and persuasive, okay? You should have evidence to support your claims. When you're analyzing the pros and cons of A and B, enough weight should be given to pros and cons for both A and B, okay? So the approach you might want to take is to talk about the pros and cons of A, for example, traditional learning. You want to talk about the pros and cons of traditional learning. And then the other paragraph talks about the pros and cons of distance learning. Alternatively, one paragraph can talk about the pros of traditional and distance learning, and then the other paragraph can talk about the cons of traditional and distance learning.
Of course. I remember learning this structure actually when I was taking high school Spanish.
Okay.
So for our final exams, we had to write a 200 to 300 word essay in the exam, and our teacher gave us a very useful piece of advice for laying out our ideas. Take out a piece of blank paper and write very quickly 3 reasons for and 3 reasons against your argument. It doesn't have to be 3. You guys will know how many. Your teacher will be able to tell you what a good number is. But very quickly write out your number of reasons for and against. Seeing these ideas laid out on the paper will give you a good idea of the direction you want to take your essay in and help you make sure that you don't write too much for argument A and too little for argument B, which happens a lot. People write a lot for the first part and then they're like, oh, I only have 100 words left.
Yes.
I've got to rush in some argument B and I'm done.
Yeah, or they run out of time.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. So for the conclusion, you can tie all your ideas together and then discuss your stance on the topic, okay?
Right. As we've discussed earlier this month, try asking yourself, so what, when you get to your conclusion? Why is my argument important? For example, if you're discussing ways to prevent climate change, your conclusion could say something along the lines of, we don't have much time left until irreversible damage has been done to our planet. That creates a sense of urgency. It gives the reader more reason to consider your point of view, why what you're saying is important.
Okay, now it's time to start brainstorming for our essay. Now, it might seem like an unnecessary step in the writing process, but it actually can be really helpful, especially when you're stuck or having writer's block. So this was just like what Seb was saying earlier, where you take out a piece of paper and you write 3 cons and 3 pros. So for a pros and cons essay, it might be easier to brainstorm your ideas by using quadrants, okay? If you take a look at the sample in the magazine, you can see there are 4 quadrants, okay? There are 2 quadrants for distance learning and 2 for traditional learning. Of the 2 quadrants, 1 represents the pros and 1 represents the cons. Now, write down ideas for each quadrant. For example, a pro for distance learning is that students can call anywhere their classroom. And a con might be that distance learning requires a lot of self-discipline, which may not be suitable for everyone.
Right. You need to get your head down and you need to keep studying. Personally, I don't have a lot of self-discipline. I need a room, I need a classroom, I need a teacher standing over my desk saying, you have to finish this project now. Otherwise, I'm just going to get distracted.
I see.
Yeah, I procrastinate a lot. Make sure you do the same for your traditional learning section as well, because we're discussing different types of learning, not just distance learning. So, for example, an advantage of traditional learning is that you can share ideas with your classmates, but a disadvantage is that it requires you to take classes at specific times, limiting your ability to work or travel while you're studying for your degree. So, yeah, you can't do so much while you're doing a traditional learning course.
That's right.
But you could also argue the quality of your education might be higher. Might be. We've not got down to our full argument just yet.
Yeah. Okay, so remember at this point, you're only brainstorming. So you can just use simple words or phrases to express your ideas.
Right.
Don't worry too much about grammar or spelling. Just get your ideas down.
Exactly. One trick we used to use at school was to suck on a candy.
Really?
Yes. I don't know if you have polos.
Polos.
Little mint circles.
I know what those are, but they are not in Canada. They were in Singapore. I know about them because of Singapore.
I think it's a British candy, which is why it's in Singapore. Anyway, it's a hard candy. This is a traditional trick. You can still use it when you're practicing.
Okay.
You suck on a candy, and your goal is, before you finish the candy, you have to write out all the ideas you have for the article. It encourages you to think quickly. It means that you can't take more than about 5 minutes doing this.
Right. And then if you have the bad habit of like biting down on your candy, you have less time to do your brainstorming.
You've got to be fast. You've got to be fast. I find that these small goals can be very good when you need to kind of motivate yourself to be quicker.
Okay.
Plus, you get to eat candy.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Okay, now take the ideas you've brainstormed and expand on them. That's what we're going to do in our outline. Then you can put these ideas together, okay? In the outline, we'll categorize the main points you want to mention and organize our sentences into paragraphs. We can get a better idea by looking at the sample outline in the magazine. Let's take a look at the introduction.
The age of the internet has opened doors to new ways of learning. So that is our first sentence. This sentence is actually going to be our thesis statement. This thesis statement is very short and very brief. It introduces us to the subject and makes it clear what we are going to be talking about. Different ways of learning. Let's take a look at our first topic sentence now.
Okay, so the first topic sentence says, distance courses have some advantages, okay? And then you'll see the advantages and disadvantages neatly listed below. Pros, you can attend class from anywhere you like.
Okay.
All your materials are available on the internet.
Right, you can get them whenever you need them.
Exactly. And cons, okay? Well, you have less face-to-face time with classmates and teachers. And B, online classes aren't suitable for people without good time management.
Exactly. You need that dedication if you're going to get this work done. Let's look at our second topic sentence, and we're going to be looking at traditional learning here. It says, in-person classes are better for social learners. Okay, look there, we've actually got a compound noun there, in and person linked with a hyphen. We're saying classes where you are there
in person.
You are going to the class. You're not watching a video. Okay, so what are the pros for in-person classes? You can share notes and form study groups easily. Very good for a social learner. You can see your teacher every class. And for our cons, we've got traditional classes limit people to one place at one time. And the materials can be expensive and use lots of paper. Right, so it's not very good for the environment.
Okay.
Anyway, let's check out the conclusion.
Right. Okay. It says, I prefer traditional classes.
Right.
Okay. So we've mentioned the importance of an outline many more times than I can count. I'm sure through all these writing exercises, you can see how outlines can be quite helpful in the writing process.
Right.
Now, an outline helps you organize your ideas to see which parts need more information and which parts have too much information. Once you have your outline down, you can just add supporting evidence and some transitions, and voila, you're done. So I can see in this essay, I feel like there's enough content. Based on this outline, there's enough content. I don't think there's anywhere we need to add more information.
Right. For 120 words, we just need to add a little bit of filler, basically.
Right.
We need to connect these sentences in a way that reads well. But if we were going to do something longer, maybe in the introduction, we could talk about how the internet has changed learning for different people. We could maybe talk about different types of learners. We'll talk about the different types of learners later in the episode too. But before we get into all of that, let's take a short break and then let's come back with our basic sample.
Writing Sample 1. The age of the internet has opened doors to new ways of learning. One of these approaches is distance courses, which have some definite advantages. One of them is that you can attend class from anywhere you like, and with all your materials available on the internet, there's no need to carry heavy textbooks. However, you'll have less face-to-face time with classmates and teachers, and online classes aren't usually suitable for people without good time management skills. Traditional, in-person classes are better for social learners. You can share notes and form study groups with classmates easily, and you see your teacher every class. Yet some people don't like how traditional classes limit them to one place at one time, or how the materials can be so expensive and use so much paper. Personally, though, I still prefer traditional classes. Learning with other people keeps me motivated and helps me understand ideas better. Okay, so all of the points raised in this writing sample should be no surprise, right? Since the writer followed his or her outline.
Right.
You can see the structure is the same. The writer first talked about the pros and cons of distance learning and then went on to discuss the pros and cons of traditional learning.
Right. They did. And they opened with a really nice sentence. The age of the internet has opened doors to new ways of learning. The phrase I want you guys to remember from this sentence is open doors to. When we open doors to an opportunity or an activity, we make that opportunity available. So what we're saying is that the development of the internet has led to or has enabled people to study in new and different ways. Moving on, we see that the article's ideas are presented in a very balanced way.
Yes, you can also see how the ideas presented are kind of relative to each other, okay? So a con for distance learning, students have less face-to-face time with classmates and teachers, is not an issue for traditional learning, where students can interact with one another, share notes, and form study groups easily.
Right. One of the key advantages of traditional learning here is that people can form study groups. This is a great learning tool in which students get together to do homework or prepare for exams. As 4 brains are better than 1, you can open yourself up to different perspectives and ways of thinking in a study group. If you're doing a project, it might even inspire you to take different creative directions or use different techniques with your work. It does require discipline, though. You're not hanging out, and that's one problem that our writer points to.
Yes, okay. So the writer points out how people without good time management skills may not fare well in distance learning. Okay, so time management skills refers to your ability to organize and plan how long you spend on specific activities by prioritizing and scheduling tasks and goal setting, okay? So with some distance learning courses, you might have the freedom to decide when to take an online class and when to submit an assignment. Now, if you're poor at managing time, you might procrastinate and leave everything to the last minute.
I am the worst procrastinator. I procrastinate all the time. I think I procrastinate every single day, actually. So when we procrastinate, we do something which is not related to our work because we secretly don't want to do our work. So that could include cleaning your room, doing other jobs, doing work that's not that important. Sometimes I'll even ask for more work.
And will you do that
work
work
So I can do
first?
that work instead.
Wow.
Yes, you typically procrastinate more with high-pressure projects or stuff which you don't feel so confident doing. That's typically when you procrastinate.
So when you procrastinate, you're pretty much leaving that task until the last minute, until the very final minute that you need to do it.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think procrastination is a problem for both traditional and distance learners.
It is,
It's just a different kind of procrastination. If our distance learners, we need the discipline to do our work on time.
Right.
But if we are social learners, we need to make sure that we are using our time in a group to study and not just to chat.
Chit-chat,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier social learning, okay? When we say someone is a social learner, you likely prefer to learn in groups rather than spending one-on-one time with a teacher or an instructor, okay? So social learners learn better when they can discuss ideas and problem solve with other people. Now, the traditional style of learning is best suited for social learners since they can interact with other people face to face.
Right. I've also heard of learner types being divided in another way as well. In school, we learned about 3 types of learners.
Right.
And this focuses more on the senses that you use rather than the environment that you're learning in. So one, for example, is a kinesthetic learner. Now, this is a fancy word, kinesthetic, which means doing or taking action. So a kinesthetic learner is someone who learns best by doing things themselves or maybe doing an experiment if it's a science class, physically doing things, taking action themselves. There are aural learners. Aural learners is spelled A-U-R-A-L, and then learners. And that is somebody who learns things by listening to things. So they might be very good at paying attention to a teacher for a long time. If you're an aural learner, this class we're doing right now is probably very good for you.
Yes.
And also visual learners last. Visual learners are learners who learn things by seeing things. Okay, so those are 3 different kinds of learning, and they are actually, you can be a combination of the 2.
Yeah, I think I'm a kinesthetic and a visual learner. I know I need to actually try what I'm learning by myself, and then I also need to be able to see what it is that I'm learning. Yeah, so for me, this type of learning where it's just auditory, it wouldn't do very well for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not our ideal customer.
No, not at all.
So how does our writer finish the essay?
Well, the writer ends off the essay with a strong conclusion by giving his or her preference, okay, traditional classes, and the reason. He or she is a social learner. All right. Okay, so that's our conclusion for our writing sample 1. Okay. Now let's take a look at the second sample.
Writing sample 2. Thanks to technology, there are more and more opportunities these days to learn. When it comes to the choice between traditional learning and distance learning, there are a couple of factors to consider, namely flexibility and cost. With distance learning, you can study whenever and wherever suits you best, making it easy to tailor classes to your lifestyle, job, or physical condition. For example, if your preferred school is not wheelchair accessible, you can take lessons at home. This flexibility is seldom an option with traditional learning, as you must follow whatever schedule the school sets. Cost is also an important aspect. With traditional learning, your tuition will have to cover expenses like the teacher's salary, the use of the school building, and any resources. With distance learning, however, you may be able to get a better deal. Of course, every educational institution differs, and you'll need to choose the right one for your needs. But if I had the choice, I'd take distance learning every time. Okay, so a slightly different approach in this article, right?
In this essay, we can see that the writer took a different approach with this writing exercise. So instead of discussing the pros and cons of traditional learning and distance learning, the writer focuses on two factors, flexibility and cost, and states how distance learning offers more flexibility and is more cost-effective compared to traditional learning.
We also saw a really good word in there, factor, which I think you'll probably be using in an argumentative essay. A factor is a thing we need to think about or consider before we make a decision. So here we're talking about cost, flexibility, accessibility, whether somebody can get in a wheelchair. These are all things to think about. They're all factors. So when we're making a big decision, we have to think of the bullet points that go into that decision, and those are our factors. Now, there are a couple of similar words we can also use. A variable, for example, is a factor that changes easily or is not certain. So we could say, I really want to go traveling, but I can't make any fixed travel plans right now because there are too many variables. I don't know if I can get the time off work, and I don't know if I can afford the flights.
Right.
So depending on those things, I might have to change my travel plans. Another word we could use is aspect as well, which appears later on. And an aspect, again, is just a part of something. Okay, let's talk briefly about the conclusion before we finish this episode now. So what I really like about the conclusion is rather than just giving a firm distance learning is better, the author kind of takes into consideration the diversity of education. The fact that there is not just one kind of distance learning program, there's not just one kind of traditional learning program. He says, of course, every educational institution differs, okay? Every one of them is different, okay? So just because it is a distance learning program doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be better for you. You should think about what's best for your needs and, properly consider your choice. Don't just take this article as the reason you should go to Yale or you should sign up for masterclass.
Right.
Do a little bit more research. It invites the reader to do a little bit more reading on their own. But it also, we don't want it to be too soft. It still gives the writer's opinion. It still says, I would choose distance learning. Nobody likes a very soft conclusion. You do want to have some opinion or something to take away from that.
And it looks like the writer would choose distance learning every time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you'll notice on the last page of this unit, we've included another little exercise for you to practice brainstorming on your own, okay? You'll be evaluating the pros and cons of shopping at a physical store versus shopping online. Okay,
tricky.
So first you'll need to do some brainstorming, and then you will create an outline from the ideas you've gathered.
Okay.
So you guys can give that a little try on your own.
Maybe you can do some research, do a bit of online shopping, a bit of in-store shopping.
Yes.
Maybe I'll help you do some research. Maybe I'll go and do some shopping after this episode. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. We covered a lot of stuff in today's episode, didn't we?
We sure did.
We did. But for English Digest, I'm Seb.
And this is Angeline.
And we'll have to catch you again next time.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.